The recycled air tasted like failure. Tail Eyes knew this because failure had a specific metallic tang when mixed with fear and depleting oxygen reserves. The harmonious dawn drifted silent in the void, its engines cold for 3 cycles now, and the chronicler's 4 arms moved across the recording interface with practiced precision even as hope drained from every cell in their chitinous body. 47 scientists from 12 different species had embarked on this mission to study the quantum anomalies in Sector 771. Now 41 remained, and the life support systems were consuming the last reserves at an alarming rate. Tail Eyes recorded everything because that was what chroniclers did, even when the chronicle would likely never be read. The distress beacon had been broadcasting for 60 hours into the cosmic silence, and no one was coming. No one traveled through the sheer fields, where space itself twisted and radiation storms could strip hull plating in minutes. "We should have stayed in mapped territory," Vriss whispered, the plant-based botanist's leaves drooping in the artificial light. The shared environmental pod kept them all alive but comfortable for none. The atmosphere was a compromise between species that breathed methane and those that needed oxygen, resulting in a mixture that left everyone gasping. Tail Eyes continued recording. Cycle 3, Hour 17, crew morale continues to deteriorate. Junior Researcher Plex expired 4 hours ago due to atmospheric incompatibility. We have sealed his body in Storage Bay 7. The beacon continues to broadcast, though I calculate the probability of rescue at 0.03%. Across the galaxy, in a region the collective considered barely civilized, Earth's outpost Meridian detected something unusual. Rebecca sat at her monitoring station, her 3rd cup of coffee growing cold beside her as she filtered through cosmic background noise. Most signals were natural phenomena, pulsars and quasars singing their ancient songs. This one was different. It had structure, desperation, and a plea for help encoded in 17 different languages. "Got something," she called across the cramped station. "Distress beacon bearing 771 Mark 338. It's deep in the sheer fields." Her supervisor approached, scanning the data. "That's outside collective patrol range." "It's outside everyone's range," Rebecca replied. "Except maybe ours." The transmission contained biological data, a clever addition by whoever had programmed it. Multiple species, all dying slowly, all hoping someone would care enough to try. Rebecca forwarded it to Earth Defense Command with a priority flag. She had read about the collective's cautious approach to space travel, how they avoided anything they deemed too dangerous. Humans had different standards for danger. Captain Orrin Blackwell was reviewing supply manifests when the alert came through. The Perseverance sat in dock, his crew taking well-deserved shore leave after a brutal asteroid mining operation that had pushed them all to their limits. He read the distress call twice, then checked the navigational data. The sheer fields were notorious, a region where gravitational forces played games with ships and radiation levels spiked without warning. He opened a channel to Earth Command. "Blackwell here. I'm looking at this Sector 771 distress call. The Perseverance can handle those conditions." "Captain, we're aware of your capabilities," the response came. "However, the survival probability for this mission is rated at 62%. That's unacceptable by collective standards." "Good thing we're not the collective," Blackwell replied. "My crew signed up for exactly this kind of work. We've mined asteroids in solar flares and retrieved satellites from decaying orbits. This is just a longer trip through rough space." Command went silent for several minutes. Blackwell waited, knowing they were running scenarios and probability matrices. Finally, "You have authorization. Crew recall is approved. Departure window in 6 hours." Across the station, notifications went out. 23 humans received the call, and not one hesitated. Medical Officer Yuki canceled her dinner plans. Navigator Kofi left his daughter's birthday party with promises to make it up to her. Engineering Chief Dimitri abandoned his 3rd attempt at assembling furniture. They all knew what those numbers meant. 41 beings were dying in the dark, and someone had to care. On the harmonious dawn, Tail Eyes recorded another log entry. "Atmospheric reserves at 17%. I have begun final preparations. The crew has gathered to share last memories of home. Vriss speaks of gardens on their birth world where sunlight was gentle and air was pure. I do not have the heart to tell them I have calculated our remaining time at 9 hours, perhaps less. The beacon continued its automated broadcast, electromagnetic waves spreading through space at light speed. Most species wouldn't receive it for years. Those that did would dismiss it as someone else's problem. The sheer fields were marked in red on every navigational chart, places where ships went to die. But Earth ships were built different. They were over-engineered because Earth orbit itself was considered hostile territory by collective standards. The Van Allen radiation belts, the micrometeorite swarms, the solar storms. Humans had learned to navigate danger as a matter of routine. What the collective called impossible, Earth Command called Tuesday. The Perseverance undocked exactly 5 hours and 47 minutes after the call went out. Blackwell stood in the command center, watching the star field shift as they accelerated. His crew moved with practiced efficiency, each person knowing their role without needing orders. They had 6 days of hard travel ahead, through space that would test every system on the ship. Course laid in, Kofi reported. Sheer field entry in 72 hours. All stations report ready, added Dmitri. Yuki was already preparing the medical bay for multiple species. She downloaded everything the collective database had on alien biology, cross-referencing atmospheric requirements and temperature tolerances. It would have to be enough. Blackwell opened a general channel. All hands, this is the captain. We're heading into rough space to pull out some folks who got into trouble. It's going to test us, but that's what we do. Let's show the galaxy what a rescue looks like when Deathworlders care enough to try. In the void, Tail Eyes recorded what they believed would be their final entry. We await the end with dignity. Perhaps one day, someone will find this chronicle and know we did not surrender easily. We called for help, though we knew help would not come. Space is vast, and we are very small. The Perseverance burned hard toward Sector 771, racing against time and physics. Behind them, Earth grew smaller. Ahead, the sheer fields weighted with gravitational chaos and radiation storms. And somewhere in that deadly expanse, 41 beings counted their final breaths, unaware that their distress signal had reached the one species crazy enough to answer. Gravity twisted sideways, and Kofi's instruments screamed warnings that he had long learned. To interpret rather than fear, the Perseverance shuddered as it penetrated deeper into the sheer fields, where space itself seemed angry at their intrusion. Outside the reinforced viewports, stars stretched into impossible spirals before snapping back to their proper positions, a visual reminder that they were traveling through regions the collective had marked with warnings in 7 languages. 14 hours into the shift and the navigator's eyes burned, but he kept plotting micro-corrections to their course. A degree off here meant collision with a gravitational eddy that could tear the ship apart. 2 degrees there, and they would add 6 hours to their journey, time the stranded aliens did not have. His fingers danced across the console, making adjustments that would seem reckless to anyone who had not grown up dodging space debris in Earth orbit. Radiation spike Section 4, called out Dmitri from engineering. Shielding holding at 83%. That's above minimum threshold, Blackwell responded. Continue course. On a collective vessel, 83% shielding would trigger immediate evacuation protocols. Anything below 95% was considered critical failure. But the Perseverance was built to Earth standards, which meant it could function in conditions that would cook most alien ships from the inside out. The crew had received their quarterly radiation exposure in the first day of travel, and they still had 5 days to go. Yuki made her rounds through the ship, checking on crew members and administering anti-radiation medication that would make most collective species violently ill. Humans had different tolerances, different breaking points. She noted elevated exposure levels for the engineering team and made adjustments to shift rotations. No one complained. They all knew what they had signed up for. Meanwhile, on the harmonious dawn, Vriss stared at their communication panel in disbelief. Through the static and interference, a signal had broken through. It was crude, barely coherent, but it carried a message that seemed impossible. "Did that transmission say they are coming for us?" Vriss asked. Tail Eyes adjusted their recording equipment, replaying the garbled message. "The translation matrix is uncertain due to interference, but yes, it appears someone has responded to our beacon." "That cannot be accurate," another crew member interjected. "No one traverses the sheer fields. The energy requirements alone would bankrupt a small colony, and the risk is calculated at unacceptable levels." "Perhaps they did not perform the calculation," Tail Eyes suggested quietly. It took another 6 hours to establish a stable communication link, and when it finally cleared, Captain Blackwell's voice came through with a casualness that bordered on disturbing. "Harmonious Dawn, this is Earth Vessel Perseverance. We have your position and our en route. Estimated arrival in 4 days, 16 hours. Please transmit detailed crew roster with biological requirements." Tail Eyes transmitted the requested data while simultaneously running probability calculations. The route the human ship was taking had a 73% chance of catastrophic failure, according to collective navigational standards. Either these Deathworlders were suicidal, or they operated under entirely different risk assessment protocols. "Perseverance, this is Harmonious Dawn. We appreciate your response, but we must inform you that the sheer fields present extreme danger. Multiple vessels have been lost attempting to navigate this region." There was a pause, then Blackwell responded. "Appreciate the heads up, Dawn. We've reviewed the hazard reports. Our ship is rated for these conditions. Just sit tight and keep your beacon active." Vriss looked at Tail Eyes with confusion written across their features. "They speak as if navigating through reality-warping gravitational chaos is merely inconvenient." "Perhaps for them it is," Tail Eyes replied. "I have been researching Earth in our database. The gravity alone would crush most species. Their home world orbits through radiation belts that would require evacuation on any collective planet. They evolved expecting disaster." The revelation spread through the Harmonious Dawn's crew. The Deathworlders were coming, those mythical beings from the galaxy's harshest corners. Some crew members felt hope rekindling. Others felt a different kind of fear, wondering what manner of species would willingly charge into certain death. Back on the Perseverance, the crew adapted to their new normal. 16-hour shifts became standard as they navigated through gravitational anomalies. Sleep happened in 4-hour bursts. Meals were consumed at duty stations. The ship groaned and flexed around them, its earth-forged hull absorbing punishment that would have shattered vessels built. In gentler yards, another eddy forming bearing 317, Kofi reported. "Adjust course, compensate for drift," Blackwell ordered. The ship tilted, artificial gravity fluctuating for 7 seconds before stabilizing. Coffee cups stayed magnetically locked to surfaces. Crew members braced themselves with the casual expertise of people who lived in motion. This was their element, the chaos between stars where most species feared to travel. Dimitri worked in the engineering bay where temperatures spiked 15 degrees above standard. The radiation shielding generated heat as a byproduct, and cooling systems could only do so much. He sweated through his uniform while calibrating field generators, making minute adjustments that kept them alive. His dosimeter badge had turned yellow 2 days ago. By mission end, it would be orange. That was acceptable. "How are we holding up?" Blackwell asked over the comm. "Ship is performing at 91% efficiency," Dimitri replied. "The main drive is running hot but within tolerances. I have rerouted power from non-essential systems to boost forward shielding. We will reach them." "Never doubted it," Blackwell said. On the 3rd day of travel, the Perseverance emerged from a particularly violent gravitational wave, and Kofi managed to boost their communications signal. "Dawn, this is Perseverance. How are you holding up?" Tail Eyes responded, their voice carrying exhaustion. "Our atmospheric reserves are critical. We have lost 3 more crew members. Morale is deteriorating rapidly." "Understood," Blackwell said. We are pushing our engines as hard as we can. Tell your crew that help is coming. We have medical facilities prepared and environmental pods ready for multiple species. You just need to hang on a little longer." "Captain Blackwell," Tail Eyes said slowly, "why are you doing this? Your species has no obligation to us. The risk you are taking is mathematically unjustifiable." Blackwell was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his words were simple. "Because you called for help and we heard you, that is enough." The transmission ended, leaving Tail Eyes to ponder those words. Because they called and someone heard, not because of treaties or obligations or political calculations, simply because the call was made and answered. It was a philosophy so foreign to collective thinking that Tail Eyes struggled to categorize it. Vriss approached the chronicler. "Do you think they will make it?" "I think," Tail Eyes said carefully, "that we are about to learn what it means when Deathworlders decide something matters." The Perseverance burned through space, its crew pushing themselves and their ship to the limits. Ahead lay more gravitational chaos, more radiation, more danger. Behind them, Earth grew more distant with each passing hour. But in their path lay 41 beings who had given up hope, and that made every risk worthwhile. In the command center, Blackwell watched the countdown timer. 4 days, 7 hours, 23 minutes until they reached the harmonious dawn. His crew would hold together. His ship would endure. And those stranded aliens would learn that when humans heard a distress call, distance and danger were just obstacles to overcome. Visual confirmation came through at hour 97 of the journey, and what Dimitri saw through the enhanced scanners made even his experienced assessment grim. The harmonious dawn was dying. Hull breaches vented precious atmosphere in frozen plumes. Structural supports had buckled under stress. The ship was never designed to endure. The power core flickered at 11% capacity, barely enough to maintain life support for another 18 hours. "It is worse than they reported," Dimitri said, his accent thickening as it always did when he concentrated. "The framework has failed in 7 sections. Attempting standard docking procedures would collapse what remains of their structural integrity." Blackwell studied the damage readouts. Any rescue by collective standards would be impossible. The alien vessel was too fragile for conventional methods, but collective standards assumed ships and crews built for gentle worlds. The Perseverance had different capabilities. "What do we have for external repairs?" Blackwell asked. "Repair drones rated for solar radiation work," Dimitri replied. "Magnetic hull patches, temporary sealant, portable power cells, not meant for this level of damage, but we can improvise." "Then we improvise," Blackwell decided. "Yuki, how is the cargo bay conversion?" The medical officer's voice came through from the lower decks. "We have 7 environmental zones established. Atmospheric processors are calibrated for each species' requirements. Temperature controls are holding steady across a range from -40 to +60 degrees Celsius. We can sustain 70 beings for the journey home if we ration carefully." "Good work." Blackwell opened a channel to the harmonious dawn. "Dawn, we have visual confirmation. We are beginning rescue operations. This will take time, so please remain calm and follow our instructions exactly." Tail Eyes watched through their failing viewports as the human ship approached. It was bulkier than collective designs, built with redundant systems and reinforced plating that spoke of different engineering philosophies. Where collective ships emphasized efficiency and elegance, this vessel prioritized survival above all else. It looked like it had been built to take punishment and keep functioning. The first repair drones launched, and the Dawn's crew watched in horrified fascination. These small machines flew through radiation levels that would fry collective electronics in seconds. They carried tools and materials to hull breaches, beginning welding operations in vacuum conditions considered too extreme for automated systems. "They are repairing our ship," Vriss whispered. "In that radiation field, their drones should be failing." "Earth technology operates under different parameters," Tail Eyes observed, recording everything. "They build for worst-case scenarios because their normal environment is what we would classify as worst-case." Then the first human appeared in an EVA suit, and the aliens fell silent. Dmitri had exited through an airlock, mag boots keeping him attached to the Perseverance's hull as he directed drone operations. His suit's dosimeter was already screaming warnings that he completely ignored. He moved with practiced efficiency, guiding repair operations and occasionally performing manual corrections when the drones could not reach a damaged section. "Is he insane?" one of the Dawn's engineers asked. "The radiation exposure alone will kill him." Tail Eyes checked their readings. According to his suit telemetry, which they are broadcasting openly, he has received what would be a lethal dose for most collective species. Yet he continues working. Another human joined Dmitri, and then another. Soon 4 engineers in EVA suits were swarming over the harmonious Dawn's hull, welding patches and reinforcing supports. They worked in 4-hour shifts, rotating through so no one person absorbed too much radiation. What the collective would classify as lethal exposure, the humans treated as occupational hazard. Inside the failing ship, Yuki's voice came through on a private channel to Tail Eyes. "We have detected 7 crew members trapped in a sealed compartment that is venting atmosphere. I am preparing to enter through an emergency access port. Can you guide me to their location?" "That section is contaminated," Tail Eyes protested. "The radiation levels exceed safety protocols by a factor of 12. "Noted," Yuki replied calmly. "Transmitting my approach vector now. Please have them ready for emergency medical assessment." The aliens watched their sensors as a single human, carrying medical equipment, entered their most damaged section. Yuki's suit registered radiation that would have killed most beings in minutes. She moved through collapsed corridors, following Tail Eyes' directions to the trapped crew members. When she reached them, they were barely conscious, their environmental suits failing. Yuki worked quickly, stabilizing each individual before moving to the next. She administered oxygen supplements, sealed suit breaches, and kept up a steady stream of reassuring words even though most of them could not understand her language. Her dosimeter had progressed from yellow to orange to red. She ignored it. "Why is she doing this?" one of the trapped crew members asked Tail Eyes through a weak comm signal. "Because you need help," Tail Eyes replied simply, beginning to understand, "and she is capable of providing it." The transfer operation took 6 hours. One by one, the Dawn's crew was evacuated to the Perseverance. Humans in EVA suits physically carried those too weak to move. They established portable atmospheric bridges between ships, ensuring each species could breathe during the transition. When crew members panicked at the high gravity and radiation levels aboard the human vessel, the rescuers spoke in calm tones and guided them to prepared environmental pods. Aisha, the supply officer, had transformed the cargo bay into a refugee center. Each pod maintained different atmospheric conditions, different gravity levels, different temperatures. It was a logistical nightmare that she had somehow made functional. As aliens arrived, she directed them to appropriate zones with efficiency that suggested she had done this before. "Pod 7 is calibrated for methane breathers," she explained to Vriss. "Temperature is set to your comfort range. Food synthesizers are programmed with your nutritional requirements. If anything feels wrong, press the blue indicator and someone will respond immediately." Vriss settled into the pod, feeling proper atmosphere for the first time in days. "You have gone to extraordinary lengths for us." Aisha smiled. "You are guests who have been through hell. This is just basic hospitality." The last to transfer was Tail Eyes, who insisted on recording until the final moment. As Dmitri helped the chronicler cross to the Perseverance, Tail Eyes observed the human's radiation badge. It was deep red, indicating exposure that would require weeks of medical treatment. "You have sacrificed your health for us," Tail Eyes said. Dmitri shrugged, a gesture the translator interpreted as dismissal. "I will heal, you would have died, simple math." The harmonious Dawn was secured in the Perseverance's reinforced tow field, its remaining power transferred to basic life support. The human ship began the long journey home, now carrying 73 beings instead of 23. Every system was strained. Food reserves had been recalculated. Water recycling was pushed to maximum efficiency. And not one human complained. They simply adjusted their routines, took extra shifts, and treated the massive increase in responsibility as merely another challenge to overcome. In the environmental pods, aliens who had expected death now contemplated life and tried to understand the species that had redefined their concept of possible. 19 days stretched ahead through hostile space, and the Perseverance had transformed into something between a warship and a refugee transport. Every available space held life. Humans slept in shifts on thin mattresses in hallways so that aliens could have proper environmental pods. The once organized ship now hummed with the sounds of 12 different species trying to coexist in close quarters. Adrian stood in the galley, surrounded by biological requirement charts that made his head spin. Feeding 73 beings with different nutritional needs was a puzzle that would have defeated most logistics officers. He approached it like any other problem. Break it down into manageable pieces and solve them one at a time. The food synthesizers ran continuously, producing meals that ranged from liquid sulfur compounds to frozen crystalline structures that resembled nothing edible to human eyes. "Your species eats this?" Vriss asked, watching Adrian prepare his own meal of reconstituted protein and vegetables. "We eat almost anything," Adrian replied cheerfully. "Evolution on Earth meant adapt or starve. Humans can digest an impressive range of organic matter, makes us pretty flexible with rations." Vriss absorbed this information. On their homeworld, food was abundant and specialized. The idea of biological systems flexible enough to process varied inputs was foreign. Yet another reminder that Deathworld species developed differently. In the medical bay, Yuki monitored 41 different biological systems simultaneously. She had rigged additional diagnostic equipment, borrowing components from other ship systems to create a makeshift multi-species hospital. Her training had covered human medicine extensively and alien biology theoretically. Now she practiced that theory in real time, cross-referencing symptoms against the collective medical database and praying her interpretations were accurate. One of the insectoid crew members developed respiratory distress. Yuki analyzed the atmospheric readings in their pod, discovered a minute imbalance in nitrogen levels, and corrected it within 7 minutes. Crisis averted through quick thinking and obsessive attention to detail. She made a note to check all pods every 3 hours instead of every 6. "Do you ever rest?" Talais asked, observing the medical officer during one of these rounds. "I sleep 4 hours per cycle," Yuki replied. "Same as everyone else right now. We are all running above normal capacity." "This does not concern you?" Talais inquired. "Operating at such reduced rest periods will impact your performance." Yuki checked another readout before answering. "On Earth, emergency responders train for exactly this scenario. Natural disasters, pandemics, any crisis that overwhelms normal systems. You learn to function on minimal sleep because people need help now, not after you have rested. We recover when the crisis ends." Talais recorded this exchange, adding it to the growing chronicle of Deathworlder behavior. The humans operated in crisis mode as their default state. They had evolved expecting catastrophe and developed psychological resilience to match their physical capabilities. In the recreation area that had been converted to additional living space, Rebecca taught a group of young aliens about Earth's constellations. They gathered around a portable holographic projector, watching as she traced patterns in the stars. "That one we call Orion," she explained. "Ancient humans saw a hunter in those stars. Every culture had different stories, different meanings for the same patterns. It helped us navigate before we had instruments." A child from a methane-breathing species asked through a translator, "Were humans alone on your planet? No other sentient species?" "Just us," Rebecca confirmed. "We developed intelligence in isolation. Maybe that is why we are so interested in finding others among the stars. We spent millennia wondering if we were alone in the universe." The concept fascinated the young aliens. Most collective species had evolved alongside others, sharing worlds and developing cooperation as a survival trait. Humans had climbed to sentience without peers, which perhaps explained their strange combination of fierce independence and desperate desire for connection. Kofi maintained the navigation plot while simultaneously mentoring one of the Dawn's junior engineers. The alien watched in amazement as the human adjusted their course through gravitational eddies that would have required full computational analysis in collective vessels. "How do you calculate these adjustments so rapidly?" the engineer asked. "Experience and intuition," Kofi replied. "I have been plotting courses since I was 16. You learn to feel the way space moves. Instruments confirm what you already suspect." "But the mathematical complexity is real," Kofi agreed. "But in the moment, you do not have time for full equations. You make the best choice with available information and adjust if you are wrong. Hesitation kills in space." This philosophy permeated every aspect of human operation. Where collective training emphasized careful analysis and risk avoidance, humans practiced rapid decision-making and course correction. They were comfortable with incomplete information, willing to act on educated guesses and adapt as situations evolved. Dmitri gave tour of the engineering section to curious aliens, explaining human mechanical philosophy. "We overbuild everything," he said, gesturing to the massive reactor core. "This ship could lose 60% of its systems and still function. Every critical component has backups, and the backups have backups. We assume failure and plan accordingly." One engineer asked, "Is this not inefficient? The extra mass reduces speed and maneuverability." "Speed means nothing if your ship breaks," Dmitri countered. "We prioritize survival over efficiency. A slow ship that reaches its destination is superior to a fast ship that becomes debris." As days passed, the aliens began adapting to human routines. They learned that when Blackwell said something would be handled, it would be. That Yuki's constant monitoring came from care rather than distrust. That Adrian's creative meal solutions were acts of service. That every human aboard was pushing themselves beyond normal limits because they considered it the obvious thing to do. Talai's compiled observations into a comprehensive analysis. "The Deathworlders do not view themselves as exceptional," the chronicler recorded. "They see their actions as baseline expectations. When asked why they help, they seem confused by the question. The concept of not helping appears foreign to them." Vriss visited Talai's regularly, discussing their observations. "I have been studying human entertainment," the botanist said. "Their stories frequently feature individuals who sacrifice themselves for others, heroes who face impossible odds. This is not aspirational fiction for them. It is cultural documentation." "You believe heroism is their default setting?" Talais asked. "I believe they do not recognize it as heroism," Vriss replied. "They call it duty or responsibility or simply the right thing to do. They have normalized self-sacrifice to a degree that makes it invisible to them." The Perseverance continued its journey, carrying its unlikely crew through the void. Humans and aliens coexisted in close quarters, learning from each other. The rescued began to understand their rescuers, and slowly perspective shifted. These Deathworlders were not monsters made powerful by harsh environments. They were beings who had learned compassion in the crucible of catastrophe, who valued life precisely because their own world had taught them how fragile it could be. 14 days remained until they reached collective space. 14 days for relationships to deepen. 14 days for the galaxy to discover what had happened. And for 41 survivors to prepare testimony that would challenge everything the collective believed about the species from the death world called Earth. The border of collective space appeared on sensors like a wall of bureaucracy made manifest. 3 patrol vessels immediately moved to intercept, their weapons systems powering up in response to an unidentified ship. Emerging from restricted territory, Kofi transmitted identification codes and waited while officials processed the impossible. A human vessel carrying collective citizens through space marked as certain death. "Perseverance, you are ordered to maintain position and prepare for boarding," the lead patrol commander announced. You have entered collective space without proper authorization and are transporting citizens under unknown conditions. Quarantine protocols are in effect. Blackwell kept his voice level. Patrol Command, we are conducting a rescue operation. We have 41 survivors from the research vessel Harmonious Dawn aboard. They require medical attention and reunification with their families. Quarantine delays will only cause additional suffering. Protocol is not negotiable, came the response. You will comply or be classified as hostile. In the environmental pods, the rescued aliens listened to this exchange with growing distress. They had survived near death, endured rescue through impossible conditions, and now faced bureaucratic detention. Tailey's made a decision. The chronicler opened a direct channel to collective command, bypassing the local patrol. This is Chronicler Tailey's of the Harmonious Dawn, transmitting priority emergency testimony. I am uploading complete records of the past 22 days. Collective command, you need to see what these humans have done. The transmission contained everything. The distress call, the journey through the sheer fields, the rescue operation in lethal radiation, the 22 days of coexistence aboard the Perseverance. Tailey's had recorded it all with meticulous detail and now broadcast it across collective networks. Within hours, the footage reached billions. Beings across hundreds of worlds watched humans work in conditions that should have killed them, saw them sacrifice comfort, health, and safety for aliens they had never met, witnessed casual acts of compassion performed in the heart of cosmic chaos. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Let them through, new orders came from collective command. Perseverance is cleared for direct approach to Station Central. Full medical teams are standing by. The patrol vessels withdrew, their commanders uncertain how to process what they had witnessed. Blackwell guided his ship toward the massive station, aware that every sensor in the sector was now trained on them. The Perseverance limped forward, its systems depleted, its crew exhausted, its hull bearing scars from the journey. Station Central appeared on view screens, a massive construct that housed millions. Docking protocols were expedited. Medical teams waited at airlock connections, and crowds gathered, beings from dozens of species coming to witness the arrival of the Deathworlder rescuers. The rescued aliens disembarked first, each greeted by medical personnel and families who had believed them dead. Emotional reunions played out across multiple docking bays. Parents embraced children, partners held each other, friends reconnected. And through it all, the humans remained aboard their ship, conducting post-flight maintenance as if this were just another routine mission. Tailey's was among the last to leave, but before departing, the chronicler approached Blackwell. Captain, the Collective Council has requested your presence. They wish to offer formal recognition for your actions. Blackwell looked uncomfortable. We did our job, recognition is not necessary. Perhaps not to you, Tailey's replied, but it is necessary for us. The galaxy needs to understand what happened here. You have challenged our assumptions about Deathworlders, about rescue operations, about what is possible when someone cares enough to try. The council chambers were filled beyond capacity. Representatives from 70 species gathered to hear testimony. Tailey's presented the chronicle, explaining in precise detail every aspect of the rescue. Other survivors added their own accounts. Vriss spoke of human hospitality. The young aliens talked about constellation stories. Engineers praised the technical capabilities. Medical patients described Yuki's tireless care. When Blackwell was finally asked to speak, he kept his statement brief. The Harmonious Dawn sent a distress call. We had the capability to respond. That is the entirety of our decision-making process. We did not calculate risk versus reward. We did not debate political implications. People needed help, and we could provide it. I do not understand why this requires explanation. His words created silence in the council. It was such a fundamentally simple philosophy, yet so foreign to collective thinking. They had built a civilization on careful calculation, risk avoidance, and political consideration. Humans had apparently built theirs on the principle that capability implied responsibility. Yoki added her perspective when questioned. On Earth, we have a saying, we are our brother's keeper. It means we have obligation to care for others, not because of treaties or laws, but because we are all trying to survive in a difficult universe. If we can ease someone's burden, we should. It is that simple. The council debated for hours. Some representatives feared human capabilities, others argued for closer cooperation. Eventually, a consensus emerged. The collective would establish formal rescue protocols with Earth. They would learn from Deathworlder methods. They would stop viewing harsh environments as absolute barriers. But the real change happened in smaller ways. Collective engineers began studying human overdesign philosophy. Medical schools added modules on operating under crisis conditions. Navigation academies taught rapid decision-making alongside careful calculation. The humans had not just rescued 41 beings. They had challenged an entire civilization to reconsider its limitations. As the Perseverance prepared to depart, messages flooded in. Requests for human rescue teams, offers of cultural exchange, invitations for joint operations. The galaxy had seen what Deathworlders could accomplish, and dozens of species wanted to learn. Blackwell reviewed the requests with his crew. Command wants us to stay in collective space as a rapid response unit. Apparently, several distress calls have already come in specifically requesting human assistance. What do you think? The crew voted unanimously to stay. They had seen the difference they could make, had witnessed the impact of human resilience applied to alien problems, had learned that their harsh upbringing on a death world gave them unique tools to help those from gentler places. Tales published the final chronicle under a title that spread across the galaxy. When Deathworlders Care, a testament to human compassion. The document became required reading in academies. Children studied it, politicians referenced it, and slowly perspective shifted. Humans were not the terrifying warriors some had imagined. They were beings who had learned strength through adversity and chose to use that strength in service of others. They were not cruel despite their capabilities. They were kind because of their experiences. The Death World had not made them monsters. It had made them the galaxy's most reliable rescuers. The Perseverance launched toward its first new mission, accompanied now by 3 collective vessels willing to brave danger alongside their human partners. Below, on Station Central, 41 survivors watched the departure. They owed their lives to beings who had crossed impossible distances through lethal space because a distress call demanded answer. And across the galaxy, other distress beacons continued to broadcast into the void. But now, those in danger knew something their predecessors had not. If the signal reached Earth, the Deathworlders would respond. Not because they had to, but because they had heard, and for humans, that was reason enough.